Okay, climate changers, here we have a picture of the sun, and it's here because it's going to play a very important role in today's lecture, which is titled The Equation of Life on Earth. Now, I am very excited about this lecture for two reasons. One is I think it's really important stuff, and it's changes your whole worldview, and also because I invented it. No one I know has ever called what I'm talking about today the equation of life on Earth, but that's what it is. And so anyway, I have a certain kind of proprietary glee in this lecture. Okay, so we have talked earlier in this class about matter and energy, and we know that most of the energy that we experience here on Earth derives from the sun. There's a little bit that actually comes from the center of the Earth. It's from, I think, uranium decay, but we can ignore that and really focus here on the sun because that's the driver of the temperature that we experience here on Earth, the temperature of our atmosphere. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the sun and the Earth, and we have talked about biogeochemical cycles. At least we've talked about the water cycle, and we've talked about the carbon cycle. And somewhere in there, I think it was in the carbon cycle, I mentioned that living organisms play a very important role in the cycling of carbon on Earth. And in fact, they do. And that's even without any human activity whatsoever. And so in this lecture, I'm going to amplify upon that. And it's really a fascinating, and I will even use the word miraculous thing that happens with living creatures and the carbon balance of the biosphere and how that helps maintain the Earth at just the perfect temperature for life in this kind of circular, not reasoning, but this circular homeostatic organism. Some people call the Earth a living organism. There's the Gaia hypothesis talks about that. I won't. So going to focus in here on these guys here, not just plants, but all living organisms. These guys play a very important role in maintaining the carbon cycle. And how they do that is in what I call the equation of life on Earth. So let's get into it. The equation of life on Earth, which I will actually abbreviate EOLE. Frequently. You may see it that way in our syllabus, in our schedule, and so forth. So what am I talking about? Well, I'm not talking about this equation, which is here on YouTube.
It's alive. It's alive.
He discovered some equation of life.
It's alive. In the name of God. Now I know what it feels like to be God.
If you if you recognize the music playing in the background, let me know and I'll send you a virtual chocolate. Let's go back to where we were. So we're not talking about that equation of life. So what are we talking about? Okay, so here comes the hard part. Okay, an equation in chemistry usually has arrows in it, and so you would start on one side with some compounds or molecules at least, and then they would be converted to some other form. And if you have arrows going back and forth, that means there's some equilibrium of these arrows, some equilibrium between the products. Well, let's see, the reactants and the products. You don't have to worry about that technology. Just understand that this indicates a conversion from one form to another. Okay, and sometimes there are inputs into it, energy inputs and energy outputs. And so this is going to, this is one very important part of the equation of life on Earth. And of course, we need to add the things that come in and come out and the inputs and the outputs. Okay, so what are they? So here we have water, here we have carbon dioxide. So in some reaction, water and carbon dioxide come together and they form biomass. I'm just going to call it biomass for now. And another product, and I'm going to call this a... Be quiet. It's been 15 minutes. No, it hasn't. Forget it. I'll just go on. You can stop and take a break whenever you want. All right. I'm going to start it. Yeah. All right. I restarted it. So in 15 minutes, that'll go off again. Anyway, where were we? Okay, water and carbon dioxide come together and form biomass with a waste product, oxygen gas. Now, most people think oxygen gas is really cool because we need it. But really, I'm going to show you for some organisms, it is a waste product. And you probably already know that it's plants. Okay, but this is a two-way arrow. So some organisms do this. They take water and carbon dioxide and form biomass and waste out oxygen gas. But other organisms take biomass and oxygen, and together they use it and they form water and carbon dioxide, which is their waste product. Okay, and these arrows have names, and you're going to learn what those names are. But we're not done, because I want to add these inputs, these other inputs, the energy inputs and outputs. This whole thing of water and carbon dioxide coming together and forming biomass with a waste product of oxygen will not happen unless there is an energy input. Okay, and that energy is light, and so this reaction is photosynthesis. So green organisms, plants and algae, they in the presence of light can take water and carbon dioxide and form biomass, sugars, and oxygen. Okay, so they are able to take electromagnetic spectrum light and lock that energy up in biomass. So that is key and fundamental, and that's the important part of photosynthesis and a really super important part of the equation of life on Earth. Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah. I got to remember where I'm going. Okay, I'll just keep with this. Now, other organisms, including plants, so you, me, and lettuce, will take biomass such as the sugars produced in photosynthesis or starches in potatoes or whatever the heck it is that you can digest. And in the presence of oxygen, we can burn that stuff within our own cells and use that energy for the activities we need to do, to grow, to maintain, and so forth. Okay, but we because of the conservation of mass, matter is neither created nor destroyed. We take the stuff, we don't destroy it, we're just converting the carbon and other elements in it to another form, which is water and carbon dioxide. You probably already know that you exhale carbon dioxide. It's a poison and you need to get rid of it. But did you also know that you're actually producing a little bit of water when you break down carbohydrates? That's kind of interesting. We need extra water. We don't eat enough food to keep up with our water needs, but there are some organisms on planets, and I'm thinking, what are they called? Kangaroo rats in the desert that can go their entire life without ever taking a drink of water, even though they need water. And where do they get the water from? From the food they eat, the carbohydrates. And in this process, that gives off water. And the trick is that they are really, really good at conserving water. They do not lose water and very much. And so they're able to get by that way, which is fascinating. Okay, so I mentioned that this right pointing arrow represents photosynthesis, and the left pointing arrow represents something you need to know. It's two words. It's called cellular respiration. Some people would just call that respiration, but that would be confused with just breathing. So a large animal that inhales and exhales, that's called respiration, I guess. But in this case, we're going to call this process of burning biomass within our cells in the presence of oxygen to give off energy and produces water and carbon dioxide. That is cellular respiration. Make sure you get that right. So there's also energy can neither be created nor destroyed. And so what's happening here is that energy is coming in the form of light, temporarily held as the potential energy of chemical bonds, but eventually when this biomass decays, it will, or is respired, that energy is released, and it may be captured temporarily by you and me in some other biochemical reaction, but ultimately all of it will be released, and it goes out as heat. Now, okay, this is what you've got to memorize. You need to completely recreate this equation of life on Earth and name all the parts. I'll talk more about that later, but just so you know, this is it. Briefly, I wanted to come back to the electromagnetic spectrum. This is electromagnetic waves, different wavelengths, long wavelength here, short wavelength here, low energy here, high energy here. This is the whole spectrum. And as you probably know, visible light is part of the electromagnetic spectrum, but it's only a very narrow part of it, which is kind of interesting. I always wondered what it would be like to have eyes that could see all these things. I think that would be cool. And it's funny that we don't have eyes that can see all these things. I guess the things in our common day experience that are really important to us, we can figure out from this spectrum. I don't know. Anyway, so photosynthesis, you think plants and you think green, right? And so you see them because they are not absorbing green, but they are absorbing these other colors, And I'm not going to go into photosynthesis in this class, but I hope someday you study it. It can get complicated. It can be boring. Teachers can kill it for students by being really boring about it. But if you get into it and you understand it, it is the most fascinating thing, and it really changes the way you see the world. When you look at a plant and you see this green or fall, the leaves are turning color. You start thinking about what's going on in those cells, and you realize that energy from the sun is being absorbed and converted into the different things. And anyway, it's super important. Anyway, okay, so it turns out, so photosynthesis, instead of using this energy or this energy or this energy or this or this or this, uses just these wavelengths. You don't have to know that. But what I do want you to know is that in the process of cellular respiration, when ultimately that energy is released as heat by the organisms that do it, that is released as infrared long wave radiation. Okay, so that's an example of entropy, or the second law of thermodynamics. That is, you can't create energy. Second of all, in any transformation of energy, some will be lost. And so it's not really lost, it's just converted to a less organized form. There's a tendency towards disorder. And so infrared radiation tends to be in less ordered, I guess, than the higher order. Anyway, the point is we take in light, and ultimately it gets given off as heat, a little bit of heat. Okay, so stepping away from all the complicated arrows and labels, just think of a plant. Okay, here is a lettuce plant. What does it do? It sits there its entire life bathing in sunshine, and it's using that electromagnetic wavelength to bring in that energy and to capture it in a chemical form. And once it's captured in a chemical form, then the plant can do stuff with it. So at a very introductory level, we'll just say that sugar is the product of photosynthesis. It's more complicated than that, but it's good enough for us. So sugar is formed, but once the sugar is formed, you can use sugar to build cellulose or starch. You can help it. You can use sugars to then form, say, proteins and other nucleic acids, everything else that the plant needs to grow. Okay, so it starts with sunlight and water and carbon dioxide, and then so it's really kind of miraculous. And these guys are the only ones who can capture that energy. The rest of us, non-photosynthetic organisms, depend upon those guys doing that equation of life on Earth, because we can only do the respiration, the cellular respiration. We can't do photosynthesis. So we rely on plants, which you probably already knew that all life on Earth relies on photosynthesis. I hope you knew that. You know it now. But now you should know a little bit more about it through your knowledge of the equation of life on Earth. I wanted to show you a close-up picture of lettuce leaves, some other plant. This is the skin of a lettuce. It's the epidermal tissue, and these are epidermal cells, and look how closely linked they all are to it. This skin is waterproof. Water will not escape from this leaf, and it won't get into it. But the plant needs the carbon dioxide, right? It can get the water from its roots, but it gets the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. But if it's waterproofed, it can't get carbon dioxide. to those cells inside the skin that need it. And so what they have are these little bean-shaped or little mouths that they have. These are called, the opening is called a stoma, and the cells around it are called guard cells, and they can open and close. And that allows oxygen and carbon dioxide to exchange between the inside of the leaf and the outside of the leaf. So this is how they breathe. They don't have lungs pumping it, but it just diffuses. The other thing I wanted to, so that's cool, right? Okay, so these cells are all part of the equation of life on Earth, helping plants to do what they need to do, which is they need to make biomass, and so they need CO2 to come in. They also need to get rid of that waste gas. Now, let me say one more thing about plants. Most people think plants do photosynthesis, and that's all they do, and that is wrong. Plants do photosynthesis, and they also do respiration. So at nighttime, when no sun is shining on the plant, the cells are still busy. They are still doing things even though it's dark. They're alive just like the cells in you and me, and they need to grow, repair, whatever. And so they are constantly in need of burning the sugars that they make. Now, they make some sugars during the day, but they're also burning sugars continuously. Okay, they're not just making the sugars for you and me. Anyway, so plants do both cellular respiration and photosynthesis, but the rest of us don't. We only do cellular respiration. What a great test question. So think about that. Okay, plants do both, but the rest of us don't. Okay. So let's back off and I just put through these pictures together to show the whole world, the big picture. And so we've got consumers here. These looks like some herbivores eating some primary producers. That's what plants are known as to ecologists. And so they are what they're doing from our point of view for this lecture is they are gathering a chemical energy source from their food so that they can maintain themselves and grow and live, because they need energy to do the things they need to do. And they get that energy not from sunshine, but from the things they eat, as opposed to the plant that gets the energy from the sun. Okay, and so here's just various different kinds of consumers consuming primary producers, getting their energy. My wife says, oh, there's all kinds of vitamins and minerals in lettuce, and that is true, but there's also some energy as well. Although I also like to eat ice cream. That's where I get a lot of my energy from, and peanut butter. Okay, it's kind of messed up slide, sorry. So I just wanted to give you sort of a heads up on how I would test you on this stuff. What I might do, no promises, is I would just give you this sort of skeleton form of arrows and then ask you questions like this. So like, what is this? And I want you to memorize the equation of life on Earth exactly as I gave it to you, exactly like this, with water and carbon dioxide on the left and biomass and oxygen on the right. Okay, and energy coming in and energy coming out. Okay, so I would say, what does the right pointing arrow represent? That I'm not going to tell you right now. You think about it. What does the left pointing arrow represent? Also, you should be able to fill in the compounds on the left and the compounds on the right and define what is this input here and what is this output here. Okay, so do plants do the left pointing arrow? Well, what is that? Let's see. Let's go through this. What does the right pointing arrow represent? That's photosynthesis, because we would have water and carbon dioxide in the process of photosynthesis with an input of sunlight, giving biomass and oxygen waste. So that right pointing arrow is photosynthesis. The left pointing arrow is the opposite. It's where you take biomass and oxygen and you burn it within the cells of your body, or you put it in a marshmallow and put it in a fire and let it burn and watch that energy come straight out. But in your body, that energy is held temporarily and used to do other things your body needs to do. And your waste then would be water and carbon dioxide. Right. Okay. So the only organisms that capture energy from outer space are plants or photosynthetic organisms. Plants is good, although there's a lot of photosynthetic organisms that are not plants, such as algae. Shut up. All right. Take a break or not. Okay, so the only organisms that capture energy from outer space are photosynthetic organisms, plants or algae, and without them, the rest of us would be dead, or we would not exist. In fact, there's an idea that when that asteroid hit 65 million years ago, it created so much dust in the atmosphere, it gave a nuclear winter, and there was no photosynthesis for a couple years. No photosynthesis, herbivores could not eat, they died, and then everyone else did too. That's, in a nutshell, one hypothesis of how the dinosaurs went extinct. So, in the process of storing this energy, plants capture what chemical compound? What chemical compound? Well, there's actually two, water and carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is the one we're focusing on, right? I'm going to say more about that in a sec and relate it to the class. In the process of living, the rest of us release what chemical compound? Well, in process of living, we burn biomass and we release carbon dioxide. So plants capture carbon dioxide, and plants and the rest of us also release that carbon dioxide through the process of cellular respiration. Okay. Just to be nice, I've given you all the answers over here, and you can freeze the frame and capture it and write it down, or I'll probably post this as a PDF as well, so it will be available there. Okay, so this is the stuff that you guys want to study for your exam. Okay, now backing off and taking a more broader view, this is just one picture of many that shows in a diagrammatic way the flow of energy through ecosystems and the cycling of matter. So what we have in the background is a tree or a plant being eaten by a giraffe who is a consumer, and so energy is coming in, it's being caught by the photosynthetic organisms and turned into chemical energy and transferring to consumers, and then it's ultimately the energy is lost as heat, and so the consumers have to go eat some more. So you see that energy is going to flow through the system, and that's why I started this lecture with a beautiful picture of the sun, because it is the sun that is driving all this whole entire process in ecosystems. There are a few places where the sun doesn't do it, like deep sea hydrothermal vents, but by and large, all over the surface of the earth, the sunlight is driving all biological systems. In the meantime, these organisms are cycling chemical nutrients. So carbon is entering, so is nitrogen, phosphorus, all those chemical macronutrients that we talked about before go into making up our bodies. And then when we die or we lose parts of our body, like we shed hair or skin or whatever, or horns, antlers, that stuff goes back in cycles. But that there would be no cycling of those chemical nutrients without the energy that is locked up first by plants from sunlight. Okay? You can Google many images like this. They all pretty much say the same thing. Okay, so now I wanted to get real about this and show you a picture of an organism that is actually doing this cycling,
Sebastian, hey!
Participating in the equation of life on Earth. I'm going to turn the sound off here. Here's Sebastian. I just Googled just running around. That's the phrase I put in, and I found this picture of some daddy, I guess, and his boy Sebastian. Now, what is Sebastian? He, from the point of view of an equation of life on Earth, he is a consumer, and he seems to have a lot of energy. He's running around using muscular energy, the energy in his muscles to move, and he's also growing, which takes a lot of energy. Okay, so where's that energy coming from? It came from sunshine. It went into plants. Maybe some of it went into animals that lactated and we gathered their milk and made him some cheese, whatever. Everything he eats that has energy in it derived from sunshine, okay? Sebastian, as he runs around, is breathing. And why is he breathing? He's breathing because in the process of cellular respiration, he's producing carbon dioxide, and you got to get rid of that. So that carbon dioxide is going out. But how did the carbon dioxide get into him? from the food he ate. The food he ate contained not only energy, but also carbon compounds. Okay, so equation of life on Earth. The carbon is entering, the carbon is leaving, the energy is entering, the energy is leaving. The energy goes off into the universe. It came in from the sun, so that's sort of a one-way flow, but the carbon cycles. Okay, where were we? We were in here. Let's see, bear with me. So there's Sebastian participating in the equation of life on Earth. Okay, last slide, I think. So earlier in this class, I mentioned something about how this is a little bit complicated and a little bit mystical, so bear with me. Right, so the second law of thermodynamics says that in any transformation of energy, some energy, there's a tendency towards disorder. So energy is not really lost. It's sort of lost to being able to be used, I guess. So the idea is that you may have some ordered system, but in the universe, there's a tendency for that order to go to disorder. And yet you look at this picture, or you look outside all around you, and you see highly ordered systems. A tree is an extremely organized thing. If you look at it microscopically, all these cells are all lined up, and they do stuff, and they grow, and they reproduce. That is an example of order. Look at your fingers, highly complex ordered system. But the second law of thermodynamics says there is a tendency for disorder. And so we have to ask ourselves, why can order exist here if there's a tendency for disorder? And the only reason is because we are being bathed with sunlight, and we have photosynthesis and the system of the equation of life on Earth. Ultimately, the sun is going to run down. They say in another 5 billion years, we have another 5 billion years of sunshine. It's going to blow up, and we're all going to go to smithereens and become stardust again. But in the meantime, on Earth, we have a biosphere. We have living organisms that can capture the energy that we're being bathed in by the sun and capture it temporarily and make highly ordered systems. And that energy goes off back into the universe, but more comes in. So as long as the sun shines, we can be alive, and we can have the equation of life on Earth, and we can have these incredibly complicated systems. How does this relate to climate change? Well, carbon is part of the equation of life on Earth. And so these photosynthetic organisms are involved in carbon, and we're taking it out of the atmosphere and returning it to the atmosphere through the equation of life on Earth. And so that is really cool. And we, being all living organisms, have been doing this since life has been on Earth. And so that would be millions and millions of years. Now, however, humans are messing with this system. We are taking carbon from fossil fuel deposits and emitting large amounts of it, over so much of it that we've increased carbon in the atmosphere, carbon dioxide, by over 20%. That's going to have an effect on the equation of life on Earth globally. And that is where I'm going to leave you. I'm not going to leave you. I'm just going to share with you kind of personal opinion. Normally in this class, I try to remain very objective, but at certain points, I feel free to share an opinion. To me, to mess with something that has been going on for millions of years, that has created so much beauty and complexity, and to mess with that without knowing what would happen if we do it, in fact, knowing that there actually may be some pretty severe consequences, is insane. And so I'm very, very concerned about carbon dioxide emissions and climate change, because we are getting involved in a system that we don't understand, and it really could have some really profound consequences. So that is why this is an important concept, the equation of life on Earth, for everybody to understand, and also to understand how that relates to climate change because of the role of carbon in the equation of life on Earth. Okay, that's all. Thank you. We'll talk to you later. Bye.